Picture this for a second. I want you to step into a very specific pair of shoes. Imagine you're standing there and you're just watching everyone around you seemingly know exactly what they're doing, right? I mean, they're picking careers, they're building relationships, they're moving forward with this confidence that, from the outside anyway, looks completely effortless. And then there's you. You're watching them and you're feeling this thing that you can't quite put a name to. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to dive deep into exactly what that feeling is.
So you ask yourself, why do I feel so behind? And the weird thing is, it's not really jealousy. It's not exactly confusion either. It's honestly something closer to this quiet, isolating certainty. It's a deep in-your-bones feeling that the path everyone else is walking simply isn't yours. But you know what the truly agonizing part is? Your actual path is completely hidden from you. You just can't seem to find it.
Well, let's break down the actual symptoms of this experience, because they are incredibly specific. You find yourself hesitating on choices that everyone else makes so easily. You kind of wander without a clear direction. You start down one path and then abruptly stop. And all the while, you're watching years pass by while the people around you are racking up all the standard markers of a well-built life. But here is the kicker. Somewhere underneath all that wandering, there's this persistent inner voice you literally cannot silence. It's constantly whispering, "I'm not behind, I'm just not ready yet." What you might not realize is that the legendary psychoanalyst Carl Jung actually spent decades studying the human mind, and he observed this exact, heavily misunderstood phenomenon.
Section 1. A vivid inner world and why early adaptation fails.
Okay, so Jung recognized that some personalities are fundamentally built for depth over speed. They're walking a path that doesn't unfold in those straight, predictable lines we're used to seeing. Instead, it's a path that spirals inward way before it ever has a chance to expand outward. He actually gave this nonlinear path a name: individuation. Think of it like building a house. You're digging deep to pour a custom foundation rather than just slapping together a quick, prefabricated home. It's the complex psychological process of forming a true, completely unborrowed self. If you've been feeling out of sync lately, this concept is an absolute game changer. It completely validates the psychological necessity of your delayed timeline. You aren't failing to launch, you are individuating.
Now we need to understand exactly why you operate this way. For this rare personality type, the inner world is unusually vivid. I'm talking about thoughts, emotions, symbols, and intuitions all colliding at once with this incredible intensity that, honestly, most people will never experience. Jung described this as a psyche where the unconscious is highly active. And because your inner world is so much louder and stronger than the outer world, making an early, shallow adaptation to society's expected timeline becomes practically impossible.
You literally cannot just become what society asks you to become. And it's not because you're trying to be rebellious or difficult. It's because something inside you fundamentally refuses a false alignment. It knows that becoming what everyone else needs you to be would mean abandoning a core part of yourself you just can't afford to lose. Jung was super explicit about this. He warned that forcing a person into a premature identity produces a serious fracture. As he perfectly put it, a life lived in the wrong shape eventually cracks at the seams. So that early hesitation you felt, that was actually your psyche actively protecting a self that was still forming.
Section 2, incubation, not stagnation, and rebuilding the timeline.
Let's talk about your 20s. The contrast between you and your peers probably became intensely painful around then, right? Others are getting promotions, getting married, building all this visible momentum. And you felt stuck. Let's compare why that happens. Most people out there are what we can call fast adapters. They build their identity super quickly by just copying the world around them, absorbing standard values and goals. Now this produces a lot of early confidence, but Jung observed that these folks very often collapse inwardly later in life. You know, cue the cliché sports car and the midlife crisis. The rare personality, on the other hand, was doing something completely invisible during those quiet years. While everyone else was busy building social structures, you were building psychological structures. You were asking the deep, heavy questions early on. Yes, you pay the price for that early on, in confusion and wandering, but you don't pay it later because you are building on unshakable, truly authentic foundations. I want you to take a deep breath and just let this next thought really sink in. The timeline you were given by society was not built for you. It was built for people who formed their identity by absorbing the world, people for whom speed is a primary strength. You are not behind. You are simply on a different schedule. All that perceived delay, it was never stagnation. It was essential, highly active incubation.
Section 3. The burden of consciousness and seen through the illusion. From a really young age, you likely saw things you weren't supposed to see. You saw that massive gap between what people said and what they actually meant. You noticed the little social games operating right underneath ordinary conversations. And you probably saw the striking emptiness inside the things everyone else was chasing with so much genuine conviction. Jung called this the burden of consciousness. And it pretty much boils down to this: greater awareness equals greater suffering. When you can see right through the illusions that other people completely rely on just to get through the day, your own participation in society gets incredibly complicated. I mean, how do you compete in a game you don't even believe in? How do you fake enthusiasm for a life that feels completely hollow from the inside out? So, you withdrew. But tragically, that withdrawal was mistaken by others as passivity or a lack of ambition.
This brilliantly explains why you couldn't just play the game like everyone else. Jung firmly believed that the psyche will actively sabotage external success if it threatens your inner integrity. So let me reassure you right now, your soul was never broken. It was simply, and very powerfully, refusing to cooperate with a life that was not true to who you are. Section 4. Loneliness as a stage and structural isolation. Because of how you're wired, a shallow connection actually feels infinitely worse than no connection at all, and that makes profound loneliness a structural reality for you. Just look at this developmental arc. Your 20s are totally defined by wandering and that painful contrast we talked about. But the middle of this timeline, your late 20s and early 30s, that is a massive danger zone. That's where the loneliness really peaks. The pressure is immense here. A lot of people actually break at this exact stage. They numb themselves, they cave in and conform, and they basically trade away the self that's trying to form just for the sweet relief of finally belonging somewhere. But listen, Jung was incredibly clear about the devastating cost of that surrender. If you betray your emerging self just to fit in, you create a lifelong shadow. It breeds resentment, bitterness, and this quiet hatred for the fake version of yourself you became just to be accepted by others. Do not trade truth for approval. Enduring this intense loneliness without giving up is exactly the thing that forces you to finally stop defining yourself by external validation. Section 5. The quiet, late emergence, and the arrival of the true self. So if you manage to endure that loneliness, somewhere around your mid-30s, something profound shifts internally. You stop racing timelines that were never yours to begin with. You stop asking who you should be, and you finally start inhabiting who you actually are. And the difference here is stark. Society absolutely prizes conventional confidence. It's loud, it relies on external markers, it's always urgent, and frankly, it's easily shaken. But what you develop is something much deeper: coherence. Your anxiety finally settles down into genuine self-trust. It's a quiet, incredibly durable state that's grounded in deep internal alignment and completely unborrowed stability. When you step into this level of coherence, the markers are unmistakable. Your words start to carry immense weight, and it's not because you're talking all the time, it's because nothing you say is wasted. Your sheer presence can effortlessly reorganize a room. Your decisions become laser precise, driven by alignment rather than anxiety. And the success that eventually comes from this path, it doesn't rot from the inside out. It actually expresses you, rather than consuming you. But most importantly, you gain this deep, unshakable sense that your life, finally, truly belongs to you. So, the absolute crucial takeaway from Jung's insights today is this: all those years that look like absolute nothingness, those years that felt like endless wandering and failure, they were actually intense, necessary preparation. You were steadfastly refusing to sacrifice depth for speed. If you have always felt late, I want you to realize today that you are never behind. You are actually early for an entirely different kind of life, a life that absolutely cannot be rushed. I want to leave you with one final thought to really chew on. Realizing the truth about this rare developmental path means finally accepting that your wandering was always, secretly, direction. So ask yourself, which part of this have you been living without the words for?